Joe, yesterday, Tennessee, they weren't given a notice of allegations, but were told by the NCAA that they were being investigated from NIL recruiting violations against now their starting quarterback. I'm going to try to pronounce his last name. You always help me with this. Nico Iamaleava.
That was actually really close. I'm not going to correct you. It's the closest that you.
Yeah.
Wait. Iamaleava. Actually, you said it so correctly. I think now I forgot how to say it. Nico Iamaleava. Wait, now I can't say it.
Nico
you said it correctly. Yes, Nico Iamaleava.
For
I believe
the rest
is the correct
of this
way.
segment, his last name, we're referring to him as Nico. But
yes, one of the hardest names in college football.
In life, buddy. Okay, life. All right. Regardless, Tennessee is under investigation for this. Let me start off here in just saying this. I stand with Tennessee. I agree with their chancellor coming out guns blazing. Pew, 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 pew. I'm with her. I'm with the governor, the attorney general. Look, man, we just paid you a crap load of money after everything that just happened with Jeremy Pruitt. Think about this, Joe. They fined Tennessee. Tennessee pays them, I think it was well over $10 million, $10, $15, $20 million, whatever that was because of the Jeremy Pruitt thing. The very next year, they're back in hot water again. Take them on, Tennessee. But I will admit the NCAA messed up from an NIL perspective. You can't label this as an NIL issue, right? You're not investigating from NIL. Joe, if that kid was on that plane, with a booster, it is a recruiting violation. So let's not act as if he is on a plane with a booster, which is being alleged of what happened here, that is a level 1, level 2 recruiting violation. What are we really discussing? Are we discussing the way that the NCAA attacked Tennessee on this? Fine. Stand with you. But if they're investigating the kid being on a plane with a booster, okay, well, I can see why you have a regulating body doing that.
That's the whole point here, Blake. This is the whole, you're bringing up, you're perfectly setting this up here. We can't even properly talk about this because the NCAA is so goddamn vague about all of these guidelines for NIL. They did this deliberately. They were pissy the minute that they were the ones who lost in court a couple of years ago. And they said, here's a very vague list of guidelines of what you can and can't do with NIL, because they didn't want to put the effort in and they wanted to watch everything run amok and everybody complain about it. And we're now sitting here trying to break down an investigation that they're operating in that doesn't make any sense. You just made the point here. This isn't NIL related. This is recruiting related. It's a recruiting inducement. This has nothing to do with NIL. Nothing. They're two unrelated entities. And the fact that they're putting them together proves the point that they have no base for this claim. And on top of it, they need to quickly realize they need to get with the times and ignore the fantasy world that money was not involved with the inducement of recruiting of college athletes. Something needs to change. It's total bullshit. And you brought up Chancellor Plowman made this statement. I want to read her statement that she had. The leaders of intercollegiate athletics owe it to student athletes and their families to establish clear rules to act in their best interest. Instead, 2.5 years of vague and contradictory NCAA memos, emails, and guidance about name, image, and likeness has created extraordinary chaos that student athletes and institutions are struggling to navigate. What does the NCAA expect when they have done no effort to clearly painting the picture on what they can and can't do? And the only way that they show us is by punishing people. It is bullshit.
I agree with everything you just said, but I'm going to add on. Okay. It is. You know what the problem that I have with it is, at least for me. I don't mind structure. I don't mind there being a regulating body. I'm going to be a little honest. I don't even mind the NCAA investigating if the kid was on a plane with a booster. Oh,
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Fine. But this is why when Charlie Baker, it was announced that he was going to be the new NCAA president, why I came on this show. I went on my show. I went on the other 4 radio shows I do every single week and said he is going to fail. How can you open up an investigation as big as Tennessee's and use NIL as a problem versus saying, hey, this is the basis of our claim. We had the kid, an eyewitness, a testimony, whatever it may be. We have a kid on the plane with a booster. Joe, just throwing this out there, you somewhat did that to Florida State. Like they just
that was a little more cut. That was a little more cut and dry.
But it was the same. It was the same difference. It's the same difference. Hey, we're not going to announce it. We got Alex Atkins, their OC, red-handed. You know what, Joe? Nobody said a damn word. We're like, oh, okay. Sounds legit.
Well, because, but to talk about that, though, I agree it's the same thing. But that to me was a little bit more cut and dry. And it was a little bit less published because all it was him driving a prospective transfer player to a booster's house.
By the way, which
yeah.
And by the way, you know why they're not going to win this? If Florida State pursued it, they wouldn't win it because the Florida State law says that he can. The Florida State law says that coaches in the Southeast, I think all 16 SEC teams, as an example, in their state, a coach can have a conversation about NIL. It's like all of them passed it. Driving them there is the same thing. Now, I will backtrack what you just said. If they used a private jet to go pick him up to bring him to Tennessee to talk about NIL, well, then it is an NIL related issue.
Why are you backtracking like this? Why?
I'm not backtracking. But what I'm saying is the way that they're attacking it publicly, at least the way that they have announced it publicly, they gave Pat Forty something so vague that makes him look even more sus, as the kids say. That dude's so sus. Makes it look so suspect, okay? Pat Forty reported, breaking the news, sources. It could be, in his quote, intense. What? That's the official statement? All I'm going to say here is I'm with you. I stand with Tennessee on the way that they attacked you. That's like saying, hey, man, you killed somebody when you ran a red light, right? Like, hey, we're coming after you for something, but we're going to charge you for murder instead of running the red light. I stand with Tennessee on that. But there's parts of me, though, too, Joe, that asked the question, well, did they break a rule here? Because that honestly should be what we're all talking about.
Right. The problem is in that where we're at now, and this whole issue has now become ridiculously convoluted because there's an investigation, and now the state of Tennessee is suing the NCAA, and then the NCAA has a statement in relation to the suit that is related to the investigation. It's like this weird merry-go-round that's happening with everything just, swirling around. There's just like different lines connecting to every little different piece to this. It's a joke at this point. That is where we have reached this level with NIL. And I know that it's something that you and I yell about all the time. But
if they broke a rule, are they not changing? Because I saw what they did for Florida State. I'm seeing what they're doing. Joe, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just asking the logical question. If they broke the rule, if what they're doing, I again don't want to fight over the semantics of how they announced it. But if they're investigating them on a rule that they broke, Joe, I got to be a little honest. And everybody calls me the SEC homer on this show. Everyone plays the SEC homer. Joe, am I crazy for not wanting to know if they're out there breaking rules with boosters?
Well, what I'm trying to get at here is that I think that the rule being broken and the rule breaking occurring here, it feels ticky-tack in a way. Like, how many other instances can we find and easily attack other programs for doing something similar? Like,
Well,
we just talked about if Florida
Joe,
State just did something similar.
If it's ticky-tack, okay, then number one, why did Tennessee react the way that they did? Okay.
Because it's bullshit. It's again, it is total bullshit that they're being the
Joe,
ones held accountable. They were just made an example of, and they're trying to be made an example of again. As we talked about, Charlie Baker and the NCAA,
agree with that.
they're trying to use them as an opportunity to prove that they can still bring down the hammer on NIL.
You're not making an example of them. You know how I know that?
How?
Because last week they literally came out with a statement about the same type of situation with the University of Florida with Jaden Rashada.
That is...
How is it different? You got a 5-star quarterback that went to the Southeast, went from the West Coast to the Southeast. How is this any different?
Because that circumstance is so much more complex because of the rug pull with the money that was offered to him and the non-follow through by the NIL collective. That is a very, very different situation.
But Joe, you're fighting over a semantic.
I'm not fighting. I'm not fighting over a semantic.
Yes, you are. Can I tell you why? Because I see everybody on Twitter saying they're trying to make an example out of Tennessee. What the F word do you call Florida?
All of these examples, they're on a spree right now. They're on a spree. Florida State, Florida, and now Tennessee. And I wouldn't be shocked if we don't find out that there's another one that comes up in the next couple of weeks.
You know who it's going to be?
They're trying. Charlie Baker came in and said, we need to start, putting our nuts on the table and bringing the hammer down on schools in order to reestablish power. And I honestly, the whole point I'm trying to get at here is that this is going to blow up in their face because we're going to get continual countersuits. And the NCAA released a statement saying that the countersuit just merely exacerbates the Wild West narrative of NIL and transfer portal and all that stuff. And I completely disagree. The whole point of these countersuits is to establish that the NCAA is in no position to hold accountable these universities for wanting to get players to come play for their school. There is an antitrust point here. That's what I'm trying to say here is that the NCAA, because it is the only entity in college athletics, that they can't prevent free trade from occurring between an athlete and an institution from negotiating for why a certain player wants to go play there.
But that's not what they said they're investigating on.
I know. I understand that.
Okay. So again, we're having this whole argument.
Wait. But the whole investigation is not purely only the playing thing. It's also that was one of the most highly covered recruitments in the NIL era in terms of monetary value that was attached to a player's name. It was so publicly covered that this kid was getting $13 million.
Who? That was what? Or are you talking about Nico,
or whatever the number was?
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
There was a fat number that was publicly covered and spoken about freely as if it was common knowledge that this kid was getting this money. That's where this whole thing comes from. They're probably trying to use the whole private jet thing as a way of saying this was also part of the painting the picture of why this was illegal and violated our rules and, and whatnot. My whole point is, go ahead.
Joe, as someone who's done investigations for a decade, yes, if I got you for shooting somebody, I'm going to look into other things that you've done too. I mean, what are we talking about here? I got you. I got him. I got you. You're on a plane with a booster. I got reports everywhere. And then the NCAA comes and says, hey, man, this is reported on. We're not giving you a notice of allegations. We're investigating the situation.
Yes.
Again, with Tennessee on the way it feels like the NCAA is attacking them. I'm with you. Okay, I'm with you on all of that. Can I get down to the meat and potatoes now?
Yes.
Can I get past all the ticky-tack bullshit?
Yes.
Is NIL this? Is NIL that? That's not what I care about anymore. Joe, we're having the same argument every day. We had the same argument last week. My question is going to start becoming, you know what it's going to be? Did they break the rules? And you know what else? If the NCAA is not going to enact it, Greg Sankey, time to step up. If you really want to make it the Wild Wild West, if you really, really, really want to make it the Wild Wild West, let the NCAA go. Let there be no enforcement whatsoever. Because you know what really will happen? Because do you really think that the conferences are literally going to investigate their own schools the way the NCAA, who is a third party, would? No, they're not going to do that.
They're not.
So again, I can't believe I got to be the guy that comes out and says, all right, now, I'm not trying to defend the NCAA. The way they're everything.
Sounds like you are.
From Tez Walker to all the other things that we talk about, Joe, that they have been done. That's fine. The only thing that, what I'm trying to bring to light, the only thing in these arguments that never comes to light is, did they do it?
But okay, here, this is the issue here. They probably did. But the point I'm trying to get at here, by constructing this investigation, by doing the investigation, by trying to hand out potential allegations once the investigation is completed, it's not a matter of if they did it. It's a matter of if the rules are valid or not, and if they're bullshit or not. And frankly, they are bullshit.
Brandon in the chat, he is a booster. If you are doing something like what he did, I'm sorry to tell you, in the eyes of the law, you are a booster from, like, for example, in the state that I live in. Joe, we've had conversations about NIL on this show. When we pay the kid, okay, if I pay the kid, it goes by the whatever state that he's in. Let's just say he's in the state of Louisiana. Well, I know the conversations I can and can't use. If I've already paid another kid, through an NIL deal, I'm considered a booster. Trust me, Joe, I've been through these conversations.
Okay.
Anyway.
Forget that part for a second. I'm just trying to say, though, that the rules themselves, we all are in agreement here as college football fans, are ludicrous.
No doubt.
They're ridiculous. They are limiting the growth and the development of the sport, and it is such an old-timey approach to governing the game, the way that it's been handled. And I think that what you're bringing up, we get closer and closer every single day with little minute, stupid things like this that get blown out of proportion towards moving to conferences operating independently. We're getting closer and closer to that. And I really don't think that we're that far off from, as you're talking about, Greg Sankey eventually taking over. And I think there's a reason why a lot of times when things like this happen, he doesn't speak. Like you don't really hear a lot of damning statements against the NCAA by him.
I gotta say this now. Now he's got to. Now he doesn't have a choice, because you have the NCAA coming after. Here's the way that I see that. You got him hitting two of his schools in the SEC with Florida and Tennessee, right? A team, let's call it what it is. He's probably trying to pluck Florida State out of the ACC.
Yeah.
Seems like they're coming after somebody, and it's not any one of those three universities. It sounds like they're going after Greg Sankey.
And I look, at the end of the day, as I've kind of said here, them trying to swing power around is only going to burn them. I mean, if we have a government, a state government willing to spend the time to countersue the institution that is the NCAA, I don't understand how the NCAA.
Well, they're filing for a restraining order, a temporary restraining order by February the 6th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Joe, I hope they win it. I do. But again, I feel like I'm going to be the comments are going to be so nuts because they're going to be like, Blake's defending the NCAA. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. No. I'm trying. Joe, can we not have some law? You know, here's my last point on this, because we do got to get moving. Here's my last point on this. I am so tired of everybody and their mama going on social media and say, we need law and order, because in just a second, we're going to talk about Jeff Hafley and why he left Boston College. It was for reasons like this. Okay. Main reasons like this. And yet when someone says, okay, I stand on the ground with you on everything else, for once, can we say, all right, can we start regulating this? You know how
Wait, yeah, I understand. By setting precedent is the way that you start regulating things. But the problem is they're trying to set precedent without having established, clear, well-written, well-developed rules regarding this. They don't have anything to base off of. That's where my problem comes, is that they're setting an investigation based on vague guidelines that they've sent in memos and emails to say what you may or may not be able to do. They need to, instead of saying you may or may not be able to do things, to you can do this, you can't do this. I just think their approach is really stupid. It's only going to create more enemies. If they actually say, here are the new official NIL rules, here is what you can and can't do. And honestly, with what Charlie Baker had originally proposed a few months ago, as long as he comes out and says the schools can enter within an NIL agreement with a player as long as they do X, Y, and Z, the school is allowed to pay said player. That's what we need to get to. That's what needs to happen.
I agree.
And I would hope that this expedites it. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.